During my father-in-law's 60th birthday celebration, my mother-in-law publicly scolded me in front of our family. She said I was unattractive and bad at preparing things. I felt embarrassed and wondered where my husband, who usually supports me, was, but he was nowhere to be seen. As soon as I arrived at my in-laws' house, feeling fine, my mother-in-law suddenly complained about her back pain and acted as if she couldn't move. She handed all the party preparations over to me, and later, she continued to criticize me in front of everyone there for the celebration. Her harsh words dampened the festive mood, turning it awkward and tense. My father-in-law finally spoke up, breaking the silence with a simple but surprising question: "Is that all you have to say?" No one could have guessed what would happen next. I'm Sarah, 35 years old, and I married my husband Michael 6 years ago. He's 3 years younger than me, and we have a 5-year-old daughter. My mother-in-law has disliked me since the beginning because I'm older than her son. Every time I visit for holidays or special occasions, she makes sarcastic remarks, especially when my husband isn't around. She said things like, "I wish I had a younger, prettier daughter-in-law, not someone with age spots like you." Hearing these things hurts, especially because she criticizes my appearance, but I try not to react, hoping to keep the peace since we only see each other a few times a year. However, my silence seems to irritate her more, and she escalates, calling me thick-skinned and unmodest for not reacting to her insults. In front of my husband, she acts completely differently, being kind and polite to me. My husband has no idea how badly she treats me, and I avoid sharing my frustrations because I'm afraid he might not understand and I'll end up blamed. Going to her house has become very difficult for me, but my father-in-law is kind and gentle. He doesn't talk much, but he senses when her words get to me. On those occasions, he quietly reassures me, saying, "Sarah, if things are hard for you, don't hesitate to let me know. I want to be here for you." I often wondered if my father-in-law noticed the way my mother-in-law harassed me. Maybe he held back from openly supporting me to avoid making things harder for me. To celebrate my kind father-in-law's 60th birthday, our family got up early and drove 3 hours to their house. I was feeling a bit under the weather with a mild fever and lingering fatigue, so my husband Michael did all the driving. When we arrived, my mother-in-law came out with a cheerful smile. "Well, look who's here. It's been a while, Michael," she said. Then she looked at him and added, "You look tired." Michael admitted he was tired from the drive, and she offered to get a bed ready so he could rest. Michael suggested I should rest too since I had been taking care of our daughter on the drive and wasn't feeling well, but my mother-in-law quickly interrupted, saying, "Oh, Michael, I called Sarah yesterday, and we planned to go shopping together for the birthday celebration." I was surprised since she hadn't called or made any such plan with me. Exhausted from watching over our active 5-year-old and feeling unwell, I wanted to rest, too. Michael noticed this and suggested that maybe his mother could do the shopping without me, but she insisted, "It's your father's big day, and I want Sarah to help pick the best ingredients. Sarah, you'll keep your promise, right?" Without giving me a chance to explain, she grabbed my arm and steered me back to the car. Once we were out of Michael's earshot, she glared at me and muttered, "I don't think you need time to rest." Then, with a forced smile, she loudly thanked me for driving, keeping up the act for Michael. Reluctantly, I agreed. I turned to hand our daughter over to Michael, but my mother-in-law quickly took her, put her in the car seat, and shut the door, saying, "Taking care of the child is a mother's job." With no other choice, I got into the driver's seat, telling Michael I'd handle the shopping. As soon as we started driving, her tone changed completely. "You can't even take care of your own child properly. Stop making Michael do everything for you. You're just an incompetent, aging daughter-in-law." Michael waved goodbye, unaware of her words. The drive to the supermarket was tense. My mother-in-law continued to criticize me, saying, "I'll make you regret being lazy and letting my son do all the work." I tried to explain that I wasn't feeling well, but she cut me off, blaming my poor health on bad self-care. She even commented on my appearance, saying I had crow's feet, dark spots on my cheeks, and sagging skin. By the time we arrived, I felt completely drained, nodding along just to get through the ordeal. I sometimes wondered if my father-in-law noticed how my mother-in-law treated me. Maybe he didn't openly support me to avoid making things harder. To celebrate his 60th birthday, we left early and drove 3 hours to their house. I wasn't feeling great. I had a mild fever and felt tired, so my husband Michael handled the driving. When we arrived, my mother-in-law came out smiling. Well, look who's here. It's been a while, Michael," she said cheerfully. Then, noticing how tired he looked, She offered to prepare a bed for him to rest. Michael accepted, and he suggested I rest too since I'd been taking care of our daughter on the drive and wasn't feeling well. But my mother-in-law interrupted, saying, "Oh, Michael, I called Sarah yesterday, and we planned to go shopping together for the birthday celebration. You go rest, Michael, and Sarah will join me as soon as she brings in the luggage." I was surprised, as she hadn't called or made any plans with me. I was exhausted from watching our energetic 5-year-old, and I really wanted to rest too. Michael could see this and suggested, "Since Sarah's not feeling well, maybe you could handle the shopping alone." But my mother-in-law was firm. "It's a special day, and I want Sarah's help to choose the best ingredients. Sarah, you'll keep your promise, right?" She didn't give me a chance to refuse. After I set down the luggage, she took my arm, pulling me back toward the car. Once we were away from Michael, she glared at me and said, "I don't think you need to rest." But when we got into the car, she loudly thanked me for driving, keeping up a friendly appearance for Michael. Reluctantly, I got into the driver's seat. I tried to hand our daughter to Michael, but my mother-in-law quickly placed her in the car seat, shutting the door. "Looking after the child is a mother's job," she said. Then, as soon as we started driving, her tone changed completely, and she began criticizing me. "You can't even look after your child properly. Stop making Michael do everything. You're just an incompetent, aging daughter-in-law." Michael waved goodbye. Not hearing any of this, I drove us to the supermarket. Tense from her constant criticisms, she continued to berate me, saying, "I'll make you regret being lazy and making my son drive." I tried to explain I wasn't feeling well, but she cut me off, blaming my health issues on poor self-care. She even made rude comments about my appearance, saying I had crow's feet, dark spots, and sagging skin. By the time we arrived, I was completely drained and just nodded along to get through it. "Please, can I rest a bit?" I asked my mother-in-law, hoping for a small break, but she snapped, "You have no right to defy me. This is what you get for making Michael drive alone." I murmured to myself, "Is this really what you want? If you have time to complain, you have time to work," she replied, urging me on. "Hurry up, we're short on time." After eating, clean the bathroom and toilet. Even though it felt unfair, I didn't want to make a scene. I spent the day weeding the garden and scrubbing the bathroom, thinking that after this birthday party, I wouldn't have to see her for a while. Just as I finished, Michael, who had been resting, came over. He looked at me with surprise and concern. "Sarah, are you okay? Don't push yourself too hard if you're not feeling well." "Thank you," I said gratefully. "I'll take a short break." But just as I was about to lie down, my mother-in-law let out a dramatic cry, clutching her back. She had been moving around just fine a moment ago, but now she complained of sudden back pain. With a weak voice, she said, "This is terrible. My back hurts so much. I can't do anything. I won't be able to cook for everyone." Then she looked at me. "Sarah, you're my only hope. What should I do?" Though I was tired and feeling a bit sick, I forced myself to help. I asked Michael to look after our daughter and went into the kitchen. "Are you sure you're okay?" he asked. "I'm fine. I cook all the time," I replied, trying to put on a brave face, even though my head was spinning, and the smell of food was making me nauseous. I kept going because it was an important day for my father-in-law. When I finished cooking, my father-in-law came into the kitchen and smiled at me. "Thank you for preparing all this, Sarah." "Not at all. It's for you," I said, hoping he'd enjoy the meal. Soon, relatives started arriving, and the atmosphere was lively as they gathered to celebrate. But just as we were about to start eating, my mother-in-law interrupted. "I'm sorry, everyone," she announced. My back pain flared up, so my daughter-in-law had to cook all the food. I apologize for the unappetizing meal prepared by my unattractive, clumsy daughter-in-law. The room fell silent as my father-in-law and Michael froze in shock. She continued, "She's not only unattractive, but also completely inept. I worry that Michael is stuck with a woman like this." The festive mood turned somber. Like a funeral, my supportive husband, who was supposed to be watching our daughter, was nowhere to be seen. Then, unexpectedly, my father-in-law, who had been sitting quietly, stood up. "Is that all you have to say?" Before my mother-in-law could respond, Michael walked in holding our daughter and a suitcase. His face was unusually serious. "Dad," he said, "I've packed her things, just like you asked." My mother-in-law's face lit up, thinking I was the one being kicked out, but Michael handed the suitcase to her instead. Shocked, she stammered, "What?" My father-in-law's voice cut through the silence. "Take your things and leave this house immediately." Stunned, My mother-in-law realized what was happening. She tried to argue. Why should I be the one kicked out? Sarah is the useless one. She doesn't even keep the bathroom clean. But her words had no effect. The family had finally had enough of her treatment of me. The toilet is left dirty, and you call Sarah useless? She's done more for this household than you ever do. And I'm tired of watching you treat her so poorly, my father-in-law said, his patience finally worn thin. It's a mother-in-law's duty to discipline her daughter-in-law, she argued, trying to keep her composure. I was just pointing out her faults. It's my way of preparing her for taking care of us one day. Preparing her? You mean tormenting her? My husband interrupted, holding up a receipt he'd found. She even paid for today's groceries. Don't tell me you just forgot to mention that. Well, I was going to pay her back, she stammered, trying to explain. My father-in-law looked at her with raised eyebrows. Enough, you've been bullying Sarah, and it ends today. Desperately, my mother-in-law tried her usual tricks, crying and pleading with my husband, but this time, he wasn't swayed. Mia already told us about what happened in the supermarket, and in the car too. You made Sarah weed the garden and clean the bathroom. You can't hide the truth from us anymore. You can't believe what a child says, she protested. Mia doesn't lie, my husband replied, walking to the car and activating the dashcam. The footage, complete with audio and clear expressions, started to play, revealing her harsh words in the car. Relatives who had gathered nearby watched, shocked by what they saw and heard. That's horrible. I can't believe she'd treat her that way, murmured one of the relatives. Mother-in-law's face turned pale. Panicking, she suddenly dashed toward the car, surprisingly swift for someone with back pain, and tried to turn off the dashcam. But before she could, my father-in-law held her arm firmly. She was caught. With her misdeeds laid bare, my mother-in-law sank to the ground, speechless. My father-in-law then handed her a paper. I've filled in my part. You just need to sign here. A divorce form? She gasped. Yes. I never thought it would come to this, but I'm done. Don't ever step foot in this house again. She tried pleading, this time to me. Sarah, please forgive me, she whimpered, tears streaming down her face. But I wasn't swayed. You exposed your own behavior. I can't forgive you, I said firmly. It's time for you to go. As she grabbed her suitcase, the commotion had attracted the attention of the neighbors, who watched from afar. Mother-in-law, seeing her theatrics were useless, quickly took her suitcase and left, her supposed back pain miraculously gone. After she had left, I turned to my father-in-law. I'm sorry for all this on your 60th birthday. Sarah, you've done nothing wrong. I'm sorry for the trouble you've had to endure, he replied kindly, with warmth in his eyes. Relatives stayed and enjoyed the meal I'd prepared, praising the food and creating a warm and lively celebration. All my exhaustion faded away, and we finally celebrated my father-in-law's milestone in a truly joyous atmosphere. Eventually, my mother-in-law agreed to the divorce, and it was discovered she had also been misusing my father-in-law's funds, spending recklessly. She was ordered to repay the $10,000 she had spent. Facing financial challenges, she was left to manage on her own. And with that, peace returned to our family, a sense of relief and new beginnings settling in as we moved forward without her disruptive presence. Since the divorce, my mother-in-law's life has drastically changed. Now, she works as a janitor in an office building late at night, struggling financially and living in a rundown apartment that's seen better days. Meanwhile, my life has taken a joyful turn. A few weeks after the family gathering, I found out I was pregnant with our second child. It turns out the discomfort I'd been feeling that day was from the early stages of pregnancy. Now, 5 months along, my husband Michael has been incredibly caring and attentive. An ultrasound confirmed we're expecting a baby boy, and both Michael and my father-in-law are thrilled, eagerly awaiting his arrival. My father-in-law even sent over a set of blue baby clothes as a gift, a touching gesture that made me feel truly cherished. Our daughter, who's also overjoyed at the thought of having a younger brother, practices taking care of her dolls every day, pretending they're her baby brother. Watching her gentle play fills me with happiness and hope for the peaceful future we're building as a family. Our lives are finally filled with warmth, support, and joy, just as a family should be.